Hey guys, we are going to talk about looking up. This is the second of the three thirds process. If you're dividing your discussion time as a community group into three equal times, three equal segments of time, this is the second piece. Remember the first one was looking back, the second one is looking up, the third one is looking forward. So in looking back, we covered care, mutual accountability, worship, and casting vision. So that was all the looking back piece. Tonight we'll talk about looking up. This will be a much shorter video than last week, so hopefully that'll serve you well. But before we get into that, I want to give you a few reminders. Remember that we have coaching dates coming up this month. It's February, so we got some coaching cohorts planned. If we haven't nailed down our time, let's get on the city, get those nailed down so we can have our coaching meetings. And remember, we have reading scheduled. You have a reading assignment that will be due by our February coaching cohort meeting. So we're reading Organic Discipleship by Dennis McCallum, and you can get that on ebook. You can order a hard copy if you haven't already, and you should be reading that already right now. So we're going to be covering the introduction through chapter 8 by our February coaching session, and we'll be talking about it, so come prepared. Our second coaching session is just going to be a family gathering in March. We won't have any reading due. So pressure's off maybe a little bit. But you can read ahead because the April coaching session will cover chapters 9 through 13. And then I want to do a coaching session sometime in the summer to check in with you, see how you're doing, see how your group is doing over the summer. And that'll probably be sometime in July, and we'll have chapters 14 through Appendix 12 will be due by that coaching session. Yes, there are 12 appendices, and they're helpful, and they're good. By the way, when you're reading, read with discernment. So what I say is eat the meat, spit out the bones. Read critically, but not overly critically. So read graciously. Read to learn and discern. So there are things, of course, that you will disagree with in the book, but there's a lot of helpful stuff, and that's what I hope will be helpful for you. So that's that. So let's get into the second part of the three-thirds process. Let's hone in here. Remember, this is called looking up. This is where we hear from God through His Word. That's the goal. So we're going to talk about Bible discovery and Bible discussion. So we want to discover the Bible. You need to discover the Bible together in your group time. There's three parts to this. We want to observe what it says, we want to consider what it means, and then we need to apply or obey or follow what it's saying. So those are the three pieces that you need to try to incorporate every week. That's a helpful framework. That's a helpful way to think about how to do your discipleship circles, how to lead the discussion time here. So the first thing is we need to observe and discover the Bible itself. And you need to allow your people the freedom and the time, the ability to engage the text themselves before God with the help of the Holy Spirit. Don't just come to discuss the sermon, observe the Bible. Because it's Jesus who's the lead pastor, the chief shepherd, and it's His Word that we want to send people into. We want to teach them how to open the Bible. A lot of them struggle to get into it. They're afraid of reading in general, perhaps. I'm not sure where to start. Maybe struggle with it a lot. And so some have described the Bible as like a caged lion that you just need to let out of the cage and let it have its way. Let people encounter it. We believe that the Bible is clear, it is authoritative, and it's powerful. So just let it do its thing. So people come up with some goofy things when they read it, but it's worth giving them the ability to dig and to consider what's there. So here's some ideas on how to do this. You might begin your discussion time by telling the passage in your own words and then read it together. So that's getting them to hear it twice. First, through your own, sharing it in your own words, and then opening it and having everybody read it. And what that does is it even helps them to consider how you said it wrong, which is a good thing. But strive to be accurate when you do that. So that's just an idea that reinforces it. Another idea is to dedicate maybe 5-10 minutes to quietly reading, praying, and observing the passage. So literally encouraging everybody in your group to be quiet for 5 minutes and just dig in, observe, pray, see what questions they might have, see what things stand out, see what they observe in the passage, see what they see in the context. And then you can open up discussion for it. So that's an idea for how you can do that. Another idea is to have everyone write the passage out verbatim on a piece of paper. That's forcing them to look at the words and to observe what they maybe had never seen before. It forces them to slow down. And then having them write it down verbatim. The second thing is you can have them then write it down in their own words. Now that they've written it down verbatim, now they need to write it in their own words, which forces them to consider its meaning and to draw out its meaning. You're not grading this, you're not checking them for accuracy, but you're helping them to begin to learn how to do this. How to go from what it says to what it means. And then the third thing you can have them write down is things that they plan to do in response. Maybe a set of I will statements. How they will respond, how they will obey what they have read. So that's all ideas on Bible discovery, and that flows right in then to Bible discussion. So choose the sermon discussion questions that you want to cover during this time. Maybe you've struggled with how you can fit the discussion questions that I post on the city with how you'll use the 3/3 process, and here's how you'll do it right here in this piece. When you're reading the text, you should be doing this, by the way. You should be observing this Bible passage that you plan to discuss in group. You need to spend about an hour every week as a group leader digesting that text, applying it to yourself, and observing it. And so when you have the discussion questions, you need to spend some time reading through those and considering those questions for your own heart and soul and how you'll respond to God. But then you need to go through those questions, and maybe if you've printed them out, you need to circle, say, number 1, number 5, number 8, questions that you plan to especially spend time on that your group needs. This is where it takes some discernment for you. Which discussion questions are you going to need to move through quicker, and which ones are you going to need to land on and spend a little more time on for your group? So you may not even be able to cover all the questions, which means that you can't get stuck up in just the first few questions in that discussion guide. You need to have questions all through there, but you need to pick them to help lead your group. Okay, so we're going to move, remember, from observation to meaning to obedience or response. If we don't get, guys, this is a non-negotiable for group. Our groups are designed to translate the Bible into life. They're discipleship communities on mission. That's what we're after. So that means we cannot simply discuss theology in the Bible and the sermon in theory alone. In the end of the day, if people are doing that, you've got people in your group who are happy to just do that and decide that someone needs to obey this. But if we simply do that, we're just encouraging active disobedience to Scripture, that we should do what it commands. All right, so let me give you a quick tool for how you can lead discussions, healthy discussions, even with a bunch of brand new believers or a mixed group of brand new believers and non-believers, a tool that you can give to somebody who's making disciples and has a small Discovery Bible study going. This is something that you can give to your discipleship circles. those who are leading the discipleship circles, giving them this a framework for how they can have good Bible discussion times. So this is just an inductive tool called the SPEC method. And I want to give this to you so you can train others to use it. But if you're in a pinch and maybe I forgot to post the discussion questions, I'm pretty consistent on that. But if for some reason something doesn't come through, you can come to the SPEC method and you can use this. So the SPECK, it's an acronym. If you find a better tool, you can use it. But this is just a tool that I want to share with you. The S stands for sin to avoid or confess. Is there something in this passage that's a sin? So encouraging people to look for this in the text. Is there a promise to claim, a praise to praise, or a prayer to pray? You see that for the P? For the E, it's an example to follow or avoid. An example. C is a command to follow. And then the K is knowledge to attain. And that might be knowledge. What do we learn about God? What do we learn about Jesus? What do we learn about people? And what do we learn about anything else? And so you might even move that K to the very beginning of that time. So it's focused on observing and then applying. You can flip the order of that around, but that can give you a framework for how you might think of some good discussion questions to ask, and you're not overly dependent upon me feeding them to you. So there you go. An idea here is to allow for a minute or two of quiet reflection after you ask each question before you even open it up for discussion. One guy who's doing this is Jam. I've noticed him doing this in his group, and it seems pretty effective. So there's an idea for you. If you have a larger group or you want to encourage shy people to share, then consider asking for answers from a few specific people after you've given them a moment to consider how they would answer that question. And then that allows you to keep it moving at your pace, not somebody else's. Cool. Some things so that you want to avoid in the Bible discussion. Avoid making this the only thing that you do each week. I say that because I know that it happens. From time to time, you have a week where literally the only thing that you get done is you do some Bible discussion, maybe some prayer, and beating around the bush and talking about the latest movie, and then that's it. Well, avoid making this the only thing you do each week. That's why it's a part of the process. It's not the only piece. We've got to get to obedience, goals, loving accountability, care, and prayer. These are things that need to be a part of your group. So another thing to avoid talking about the sermon itself rather than reading and discussing Scripture. We're teaching them not just to hear someone else talk about the Bible, but for them to discover it on their own. That's important. All right, another thing to avoid is to avoid allowing just a couple people to dominate, and that person may be you. If you're fearful of others, if you're easily intimidated by some people in your group, or if you're a little more quiet, you need to hear this. You all know it, but I'm just repeating it because you may need reminded now that it's February. Don't let a couple people dominate. You need to step in, keep it moving, and allow maybe some discussion outside of group that may need to happen. Another thing to avoid is to avoid merely theologizing without moving toward obedience and response. So I just want to say that again. Third thing, so Bible discovery, Bible discussion, practicing the lesson. So practicing the lesson. This may seem weird to you, a little strange, maybe counterintuitive, maybe you've never seen it done, but I want to challenge you to try it and do it. I think it's valuable because we're helping people to internalize the text, to remember it, and to devote it to memory, and to meditate on it. But there's some things that you can do with this practice piece. So one idea is to have one person retell the Bible passage in their own words, just like you did at the beginning. and invite others in the group to fill in pieces that they may have missed. That helps everybody reinforce it. You can have people do this with their neighbor. So say, all right, person on your right, you guys maybe take a turn, retelling the passage in your own words. The other person fill in the details that they may have missed. So that's a way you can do it. Another idea is to practice, to not do that, but instead to practice sharing the gospel. Because guys, this is an area that we struggle in. I know you guys do. I do. How to have gospel conversations. There's 1,000 methods. There's 1,000 ways that we could do this, because everybody's different out there. 1,000 approaches, nuanced approaches that we could take with people. But it's good to give people, just like Jesus did with the 12 disciples, he gave them one very clear, simple thing to start with and say. So let's practice how you can have a gospel conversation. That piece that they can adapt on their own. But giving people some reps, we need to develop confidence and competence in sharing the gospel. So you might practice the 3 circles. Maybe you rehearse it to the group. Maybe have them practice sharing it with one another, or have one of the people in the group take a turn this week to try sharing the gospel to the rest of us with the 3 circles. So just getting those reps for the sake of building competence and confidence in sharing our faith. Another thing that you can do here is practice sharing their own story with the gospel story put in it. In under a minute, short testimony with the gospel. Teaching everybody how to do that and giving them opportunities to practice that with each other. Again, to develop competence and confidence in sharing the gospel with people who are far from God. I need that practice because I want to build confidence as well, and I bet your people do as well. That's it for tonight. Looking forward to next week, where we're going to talk about looking forward, the 3rd piece in the 3/3 process. This is the part about setting goals and praying and commissioning one another on into the week. So that's what's coming up. Let me know what you think. Any ideas you have, things that you've seen happen in your group. Tell me where you're stuck. Maybe some things that you're trying here that you think are neat. Anything that you want to chime in about, let me know. Shoot me a message. I'd love to hear what's going on. So, Lord bless. See you next time.